Hello, everybody. Okay, hopefully we are going live into Facebook, YouTube, all the other places. Now we are going to go live into the Facebook group, the Audacious Aging Club. So just give me one sec. And if you want to comment on today's awesome talk with Sarah Leslie, we will be taking comments in the Facebook group, which is called the Audacious Aging Club for Peri and Postmenopause. So I hope to see you there. And we are hitting live there. Okay. Amazing, amazing. I believe we are now live on all channels. Welcome, Sarah. So awesome to have you with us today. I am Tracy Sider, host of this show, the Reshape Your Menopause show. I'm also host of the Audacious Aging Facebook group and creator of the Reshape Method program, where we work on a different way to get in shape, get ache-free, and age not just well, but audaciously. And I'm so thrilled to have Sarah Leslie with us today. Sarah is speaking to us about how audacious aging starts in your mind. So welcome, Sarah. So awesome to have you with us today. Sarah is an upgrade coach. So tell us a little bit about what an upgrade coach is, and what you're going to be sharing with us today about change.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I love being able to be here with you in this capacity and have also benefited from your program, by the way.
It's wonderful having you in the Reshape Method with us.
Yes, so much. So an upgrade coach, the way I think about it, right, is I was a therapist for 20 years and I came up on some places in my life where I was like, oh, this feels very uncomfortable. I don't like the way things are going here. I need my life to shift. So
Mm-hmm.
once I shifted and I started enjoying life a whole heck of a lot more than I was, I started realizing that there was still that feeling of wanting more. And so instead of feeling badly that I couldn't have the more that I was desiring, I started embracing the more. And that's where the term upgrade coach has come from,
Yes.
that it's really just about allowing more goodness to come into our lives for us to experience more goodness. So that's the term upgrade coach. And, I love your content. As I'm listening to the different videos in the curriculum, I'm like, oh, this is the same thing as the mind. This is the same way that the mind works. And so it's been such a huge blessing for me to have the deeper awareness that the body and the muscles and the bones, right, that make up my body are actually responding in such a similar fashion as the mind.
Mm.
So I want to talk about why change is so hard, right? When we like sign up for a program like this, for instance, when I signed up for it, it was like, okay, sometimes these types of things can feel really hard. When we want to make changes in our life, it can feel really hard. And other times it feels easy. Or we look at somebody else and we're like, wait a minute, why is it so easy for them and
Yeah.
it's so hard for me?
Absolutely. Yeah. So let us know in the chat. I'm going to pull back and put you center stage, and I'm going to be following the chat. So if you have any questions for Sarah in the stream that is happening in the Audacious Aging Club Facebook group, pop your questions there, but let us know below. Is change a struggle for you? Because it is for most of us, right? And you're going to be helping us through that today, because just because we want to change on one level doesn't mean that you're like all in, right? There's a part of us that really doesn't want to change. So
Yes.
let me know in the chat if that has been, if you struggle with change. And, it's such a timely moment for us to be having this talk. First of all, because I've just changed the name of the Facebook group to Audacious Aging Club, because we're getting older, we're moving through life. We don't just want to age well, we want to age audaciously, which means bold. It means upgrading the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years of your life. So, and then of course we're in spring, right? And spring is a time of change and renewal, and there really is this energy out there to jump on and to do these things we want to do. And on the one hand we really want to do them, and the other hand we actually really don't, right? So
Yes.
there we go. Let's go. Let me know in the comment. Give me a yes in the comment if you have this push-pull between changing and not changing.
That's a great way to think about it, because it really is a push-pull. It's an inner conflict that we're having, just like you were saying, Tracy, about wanting something to be different. But then at the same time, there's a part of us that doesn't want it to be different. And it's because we're experiencing what is actually going on is this sensation of inner conflict. So oftentimes it can feel like just a lot of different things, but it can feel very precarious. It can feel very confusing. It can feel very like out of control when we're in our mind saying, oh, but I really want to look differently, or I really want to lose 10 pounds, or I really want to, hold my shoulders up properly. And yet we then find ourselves oftentimes taking action in some degree or another, right? We're not even just thinking about it. We actually move into some kind of action to do something differently. And yet we don't either stick with it, or we start to feel frustrated because the change isn't happening fast enough, or fill in the blank, right? There's some experience of awareness of like, this isn't happening the way I expected it to. And so I'm just going to dip out. And so why is that true? Well, there are, perhaps a million different reasons why that's true. And I want to really narrow it down so you have just like something tangible to hold on to for why that's true. At the end of the day, it's this core part of us that has a resistance to change. Why do we have resistance to change? It's the same thing. I like to just use the example of my shoulders because that's like we've been working on my vertical leg and standing taller, which has been happening. And my next thing that I desire is to like see my shoulders go back into place. And so I've been thinking about this exact thing of change and why is it so hard? Well, why is it so hard for my shoulders to be back here where I think they should be? Because my shoulders have been rolled forward since I was probably easily 14 and maybe even earlier, but conscious awareness of it around 14, 15 years old. So I'm 46 now, going on 47 soon. That is a very long time for my shoulders to have this particular form. The mind is the same way. When you go into a new space and you start to notice that resistance and that internal conflict and feeling like, oh, this feels so hard to change, it's because the part of your mind that has been the rolled shoulder has been there for so long. Most of the thoughts and feelings that we have in today, at whatever age you are, you first learned them by the time you were 7 years old. So again, I was a therapist for 20 years. I was a therapist, and I have obsessively studied human behavior to be able to understand things enough to be able to describe them to my clients. And so I've studied this part a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And when I've had hundreds of conversations with people over the years of like, where did this thing come from? And talking with people who are having very difficult times in life, things like addictions, some of those more significant struggles, and why it's so hard to change, right? It goes back to things that happened to us in the 0 to 7 years old, which to me is still surprising. Like I still get excited by it. It's like, what? You mean I'm still operating off of information that I got when I was 5 years old? What?
Yes.
And that's how this works. So when you understand how the mind works, then it can feel a whole lot less confusing, a whole lot less mysterious. And instead of going to shame and self-judgment, which is where most people go when they set a new goal or they set a new resolution, and then a short while later, they notice, oh, I'm not doing that anymore. What's wrong with me? Why am I doing that? I must, have some sort of problem, et cetera, et cetera. We go into that self-judgment and make ourselves feel bad for it. When the reality is, no, we've just been trained and conditioned to believe in a certain way. So it's not that you're, not disciplined enough, or that you're not a hard enough worker, or that you haven't put in enough time, effort, money towards a certain thing changing in your life. It's this far more fundamental core part of you that hasn't gotten the proper attendance. It hasn't gotten the proper attention to be able to understand the real core reason why you're not allowing yourself to change.
Right. That is so interesting. And I love the analogy you make with the body, right? Because just taking that one step further in terms of the body, it is the fascia, it's this web of connective tissue throughout your entire body that is literally sticking your shoulders forward, right? And so the fix for that is not to pull against the tension. The fix is not to spot treat your shoulders. It's a whole body. It's a whole body alignment change that we're working on in the Reshape method. And it sounds like what you're saying in terms of the mind as well is that we're literally stuck in this web of thoughts and responses and reactions, these default thoughts and patterning that have happened from like between, under 7 years old.
Yes.
So interesting. And so just like we can't push too hard against the fascial tension that's causing you to be physically stuck. I'm assuming you're going to tell us that there's a way to unravel that tension and stickiness that's keeping our responses in the mind, right? In the experience of the 7-year-old.
Yes, absolutely. So what's really required to change, right? And just to keep it so super simple, what's required to change is first a change in the way you're thinking, right? So if the challenge is in our mind and the way we're thinking about things, then the antidote, the simple solution is we have to actually alter the way that we've been thinking about things. So part of the reason why even that is so hard, because it kind of sounds like yes, that must be the answer. And it's so like huge of a thing because most of the time, I'll say, 95% of the time, I'm just totally throwing out the number. When we're really wanting to change and we're really struggling to do it, we can't see with our own eyes, our own awareness, what we really need to change about our thinking. Because again, if you think about something that's been with you since you were 7, for you to be able to recognize that thing that's been going on in your body and in your mind for that long, that's virtually impossible to actually be able to see it.
Right.
So if we're not able to see it for ourselves, well, then we can't change what we actually need to change.
Right. And it kind of like goes back to our making analogy with the alignment work that you and I are working on with you is that, and I like to say so often, you can't change what you don't acknowledge, right? As Dr. Phil likes to say. But in terms of the alignment, like you don't even know you're out of alignment because it's your normal. Yes. And these thoughts that we have, and we don't even know that they are tripping us up and stopping us from being the audacious people we want to be, because we've got no distance from them, right? It's your normal. It's just normal for your brain to go down these patternings. Yeah.
I'll just use another analogy. I love using analogies. I know I'm a very visual person, but a very common one for people who fall into sort of this, high drive, high accomplishing, high achieving type of people, which I think, for the most part, people that want to live audaciously are going to be more of those people who are really out there making it happen to some degree, right? We tend to think we have to be really busy. I know for me, for most of my years as an adult, it was like, I'm so busy. Was just like a normal thing. How did I learn to be so busy? Because really, I'm not a heart surgeon. Like I'm not, out there on the front lines at that level for sure. And I learned to be so busy and I learned to do all of the things. So much so that I got to the point, in my later 30s where I was like, I'm completely exhausted. I cannot keep living this way. This is completely not doable. And I was sort of, we'll say, forced myself into a radical shift. But again, where did I learn to be so busy? I learned to be so busy in childhood from watching the adults and the world around me who was also demonstrating and modeling for me, I'm so busy. There are so many things that I have to do. I have to do all of the things. nobody sat me down and was like, when you're an adult, you have to be really busy and your calendar has to be, completely packed and you have to have it in color coded 4 or 5 different colors to let you know everything that you're working on. Nobody taught me that. Nobody sat me down, right? It was just modeled, was demonstrated. So we're watching the news, we're taking in some kind of social media, we're learning it from there. We're definitely learning it from the people in our lives, specifically and primarily from the people who lived in the same house with us as we were growing up. And I'd like to point out here sometimes too, what the experience you could have as a child is that your parents were the opposite of successful or the opposite of busy. And so you're not paralleling them. You're actually a reflection of the rebellion of what they were doing. Right. So it's not always, again, it's just not easy to see.
Yes, that's such a good point. Such a good point. And let us know in the comments, which one are you? Are you modeling off, a family circle that was very, very busy, or are you rebelling against a family circle that was maybe not as, I don't know, what is the word? Like
Yeah, just
ambitious?
more not as ambitious. Yeah. More, I don't know. I mean, some of the clients that I've worked with, would refer to their family as lazy or not as productive or didn't have high achieving type of goals. And so they're overcompensating
Mm-hmm.
because they made a decision in early childhood. I will not be like my mother. If you can relate to that, I've said that a few times in my childhood,
Yes, yes.
had that sensation. And what happens is that's a real thing. We're like making an agreement that we don't even know we're actually making consciously. We
Mm-hmm.
think we're just a kid and we reflect back and we were just a kid. And if you look at your life, chances are, if you look at it with those eyes that say, when did I throw my fist on the table and say, I will not be like my parents? You've probably created that part of your life to for sure not reflect your parents.
Mm-hmm. Such a good point. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
amazing, right?
yeah.
So that leads into, well, what is actually required to be able to make a change, right? First, for sure, it's a change in thinking. And I like to use just that simple because again, if you're spending time thinking about I don't know, a common one that I help people with is making money, being able to make money, the money that you want to make and the money that making it the way you want to make it. And so if part of your upbringing was it's really hard to make money, just to keep it simple, then as you're now an adult and you're thinking, I want to make more money, but back in the back recesses of your mind, you have this other thought that's really been laying there for many, 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 many years. It's really hard to make money, which then fuels, right? This other thing we've been watching about being so busy and doing all of the things and leading to those places of like overdoing and being overly responsible. So the first part is always recognizing, okay, I have that thought. It's so hard to make money. And that can be as simple as some journaling can really be helpful. It doesn't need to be long or intensive, but it could be as simple as you get to the end of the day and you're like, what were the thoughts? Like, name 5 thoughts that you thought about that day, that you had that day, that are working against your goals, right? To just literally start to upgrade your awareness in how you are counteracting the goals that you want to be having to
Mm-hmm.
see acquired.
Right.
So just that reflection on, well, what
Yeah.
thoughts was I thinking today to
Right.
not be able to make more money?
Yeah, yeah. It's like there's almost this, we have these hopes and dreams and goals and ambitions, and it's almost like there is this underlying counter narrative going on
Yes.
that we don't even really hear,
Nope.
but it's there.
Because it's our normal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you heard all of the adults in your world saying something like, it's really hard to make money, right? And that's such a common one because everyone's concerned about money. And there are all kinds of thoughts and beliefs about making money. And there's a widespread sentiment that sounds something like it's really hard to make money. So it's, again, it's literally what you've been surrounded by. All the voices are saying the same thing. And when you're a little kid, you're like, you literally are a sponge that's just collecting all of the data to be able to learn how to do life as quickly as possible. So you don't know that you don't even know that there's another way to think about it. As far as you're concerned, it's a fact. It's hard to make money. That's a fact.
Yeah.
So you're not going to go in and challenge facts, because that would be stupid. I mean, that's how we think, right? It was like, why would I challenge that? That's a fact. It's like so proven.
Yeah.
But those are the actual thoughts that we need to be willing to check.
Yeah. And the first step you're saying is to just acknowledge that those thoughts are even going on. So your one tip to do that is to journal. What other kind of strategies do you have for people to start to become aware that there are these self-sabotaging thoughts going on?
Yeah. So, the journaling is like a way that you can self-reflect. Other ways that you can self-reflect. I do a lot of self-reflection on my walks, which, thanks to your program, I am like back in full force with my walks, and even more than I was doing before. So I use a lot of my walking time is for my own self-reflection. And if you're anything like me, if you're walking, you're probably also self-reflecting. If you're driving, you're probably also self-reflecting. Another very common place that people self-reflect is in the shower. Anything that you're doing that's like a behavior that you already know how to do and doesn't require thought and intention to tell yourself how to do it. So brushing your teeth, most of the time cooking, those types of things that you're on automatic pilot, you usually are doing self-reflecting. So it's really something that you've been reinforcing, again, bringing back to my attention, is that stacking of the habits, right? So instead of self-reflecting on the things that we don't want, which is our normal, most people's normal is to reflect on the things that they're frustrated about, they don't want. Instead, flip that time very intentionally, which will take practice. Because again, your program has been to complain. Shift that to focusing on the self-reflection of, how have I been working towards my goals? How have I been working against my goals? That self-reflection time is literally, it's the most important thing to bring about into your life in order to have the awareness you're even actually preventing yourself from having what you want.
Right. And I think sometimes we can even self-sabotage the self-reflecting time by, going on a walk, and instead of just using it to ruminate, listening to music or a podcast, right? These strategies, because I think on one hand, we may have an awareness that there's some kind of self-sabotage going on, but we don't even want to go there. It's too hard to go there, or it's too painful to go there. So we stop any opportunity to reflect.
Yes, we fill in all the silence.
Yes.
Absolutely. Because we don't want to feel bad. Right. And again, that's the place that we go to when life isn't going according to plan. We typically, as humans, until we learn not to do this, we go to self-judgment and feeling shame, feeling not good enough. What's wrong with me? Why do I have this problem? Right. And we like to look at our neighbor, whether it's your real neighbor or your figurative neighbor, and say, but they're not struggling. Why am I struggling? So the other thing I was thinking, of course, right, hiring someone. And that's, of course, what I would advocate for, because when we allow someone else to come in as that outside observer, you can see the thoughts that are causing the problem so quickly. From just one conversation that I have with somebody, I'm able to very quickly be like, oh, these are the thoughts that are coming up that are causing the true problems that you're having. So that's always what I'm going to advocate for in any kind of significant way that we want to change. The second thing or third thing, wherever I'm at in that I want to also really make sure to hit on is it's changing the thinking, and then it's deciding to do differently. And that's the other thing that people skip that step all the time. Even sometimes when we sign up for a program to help us change, we'll make the decision to sign up for the program, but we haven't really made the decision to change. And so
Oh,
that's a very sneaky
yes.
one, right?
Yes,
When you're
it's
talking about
sneaky.
self-sabotage,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's very sneaky.
Right.
So the decision is like a superpower. And until we've decided on any number of things, and it could be like several things. I mean, even this morning, I had to make a decision. So in the program and the way that I do the program with Tracy is I do 2 days of workouts and then 1 day not working out, and then 2 days on, 1 day off. And so today, just the way that those days fall was a workout day. And I have an extra early event off, out in the world. I work from home. So it's a new thing to be out and about, right? And be somewhere at a certain time rather than just rolling into my office here. So this morning I had to make a decision that
Mm-hmm.
said, yeah, even though I have to be there at an early hour and I want to be there early and I want to do this and da 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 da, 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 I'm working out. Like the 30 minutes is going to happen no matter what. So it's a constant process of making decisions. We make a ridiculous amount of decisions inside of every single day. We're completely unaware of most of them because they're just normal, like everyday things. Again, when your mind isn't focused in and like doing something intentionally, we're on autopilot, and we do
Right.
the majority of our life is on autopilot. We're not deciding to brush our teeth, hopefully. We're not deciding to make ourselves meals or shower, hopefully. And they are decisions. So again, you can sign up for a program to help you change, and you still have to continue to make that decision to do the change, to implement the strategy, to show up for the call, to, get up and do the workout and continue, right, to do that part of the work. The way I like to think about it, it's like those are the two steps that are just always happening as we're evolving through life. We're
Mm-hmm.
changing the way we think. I mean, even this morning, an older version of me would have been like, oh, this morning it's not going to work out. I'm just going to skip it. The current version of me, I just have a different priority on my body structure. Like it's so important to me right now for many of the reasons that you've shared in different ways that I've heard you talk about it. And so this morning it was like, no, I'm absolutely doing it no matter what. So I just want the people listening to know that that process, while it can sound so simple, it is like having a superpower to know that is how change happens.
One decision at a time.
Yes. Change thinking and then one decision at a time. Yes.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of us overlook that there's like the yes and no. We think decisions are binary, yes and no, right? But there is when you're deciding, yes, I'm going to do something, that is going to be taking you forward, right? And we
Absolutely.
don't realize that the I'm going to skip it is actually a decision that's pulling you back. Because the I skip it is your normal, but you don't count that as a decision,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
it's justifiable,
Yes.
right? Which is what we're also really good at as humans is
Oh, yes.
justifying.
Yes.
I can't do it.
Yeah.
Almost like it's a fact, right? And like
Yes.
maybe a year or two ago version of me that the priority just wasn't like it is today on the reshaping of my body, I would have said something that sounded like a fact, like I can't do it this morning, as if that were a fact.
Mm-hmm.
So again, right, the more we can learn about our mind and how
Right.
we operate as humans, it isn't arbitrary, it isn't mysterious, it isn't like unknown. If you're not sure of how the mind is working, it's simply a matter of you needing to gain further understanding. Because when we understand it, then it's sort of like having the cheat sheet of how to play the game versus the game going on and you being like, I'm not sure what to do next. How do we play this? Right? When you like don't have the rules, then the game is very hard, nearly impossible to play because you really don't know how to play. When you know how to play the game is much easier. that's how I like to think about the mind.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I think what a lot of us don't realize as well is that by having this push-pull going on, wanting one thing and then continually sabotaging it, we don't realize how much anxiety we're creating with us all the time.
So good.
Right?
Yes. And I would say anxiety, fear, self-doubt, insecurity, and disappointment and guilt. Those are like the key things that come up as a result of that, in your words, self-sabotaging behavior, right? And so it's not only, it's actually like working against us in ways we don't even realize. Because then when we're walking around with that feeling, with that energy that we've now created in our bodies, and we then go to do the next thing, well, we carry that energy with us into the next thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is why you like can have something happen here, and then you go out there, you know, into my living room and where my husband is, and he maybe says something and I go, that's why that happens.
Yeah, right, right. It's carrying it, you know, and I think that there's such freedom and liberation, and there's such, freedom and liberation when you make a decision and then know how to stick the decision, right? And create the change you want to be. And for me, that is about being audacious, right?
Absolutely.
Rather than this like, maybe not sure, like living in this place of push and pull, which can
it's
drive you
limbo.
mad, right? Or make you like really miserable.
Yes. And it does. And that is the reason why someone is miserable.
Yeah.
Anybody that you come up on that's, you know, deeply unhappy and even just a little bit unhappy, like that's where the unhappiness comes from, is that push pull, the conflict, the internal conflict.
Yes. Yeah. So powerful. So let us know in the chat, is any of what Sarah is talking about resonating with you? I'm going to check and see if there are any questions over here. So let us know, what can you do right now to get yourself on board with making the changes, right? What are some more practical steps that we can do?
One of the most practical that I give all the people that I work with, and will just shout from the rooftops, is creating a very clear vision for yourself, specifically around this area that you're looking to have change in. So for me, with my body, as I've been in the Reshape Method program, it's really been starting to visualize ahead of time myself being more upright, my shoulders, you know, being able to stand more tall, having more energy, feeling like I can stand. I was getting some coaching on this this week, that I can stand for longer periods of time and feel really comfortable and rooted in my body. So those are all things that if I don't start having the visual of all of those things happening for me, I won't ever actually attain them. And so proactively create a vision for yourself, whatever the area is around change. If it's your body, if it's in your relationship, if it's in your parenting, if it's in your business, to begin to actually create a very clear vision of what you desire it to look like. And it's desire, right? It's not what makes sense, what seems practical, what you think you can do, because honestly, none of those things motivate us sustainably over time. You might be motivated for like something that, you know, is going to be a little bit better. You'll be motivated for a minute, but you won't be motivated over time. So having a vision that comes from this deeper place inside of you that sounds something like, it would be amazing if.
Right.
And then fill in the blank.
And even the way you said it, right? It is like, it should light you up, is what I'm saying. It should spin your chakras, right?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Definitely light you up. Sometimes I say it should make your heart leap, whatever analogy works for you. And you definitely know when you've got the vision, because, you know, a similar face that you just had will break out where you're smiling, you're feeling refreshed, you're feeling energized. literally just from connecting to a vision inside of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So powerful and so simple. And yet, for those of you listening who might be like, either saying like, I don't think I'll do that, or that sounds too easy, or I've tried to do that and I just couldn't do it. It actually is surprisingly hard, right? In all of the calls that I have with folks, I would say generously saying probably only half of the people, it's probably even less than that, but I'll just generally say half of the folks that come and, I have a conversation with can tell me what their vision is. But really, most very well educated, very competent, very capable, amazing human beings don't have a vision. They don't have a clear vision. And the vision definitely that they are sitting with isn't from desire. It doesn't inspire them. So it's a game changer. I mean, again, when we go back to energy and the thing that really moves the world forward in a positive way, in a loving way, in a place that feels good, is that we're coming from this place within us that lights us up. So if your vision isn't lighting you up, your goals aren't lighting you up, you don't want to spend time with your goals, then the vision isn't actually working for you. So that's a super practical one, is just sitting down. It really doesn't need to take longer than 20 minutes. Although again, this is like the work that I do with people. So if you're feeling like, oh, this feels hard, or no, I don't want to do that, it's totally normal. Totally normal. Not something you probably learned in 0 to 7 to sit down and create an inspiring vision, right? And even if you did, because you get a semblance of that in 0 to 7, and mom posts a picture of a vision that you drew up on the refrigerator, the general sentiment is not 100% you can do that. There's a different kind of sentiment where you just start to learn over time. That's nice. Which is where we go now as adults, right? We have these big grand visions in the back of our mind and our fantasies. And then there's the adult inside of us that comes along and says, that's nice. So just know it's a real thing. And then, like I mentioned earlier, being able to really look at managing your thoughts. What I like to think of when it comes to managing my thoughts is leadership and my ability to manage my thoughts, right? And another way of saying that is my energy, because energy is just your thoughts and feelings. That your ability to manage your energy effectively defines your ability to lead. So if you're finding yourself not meeting your goals, not being able to make changes that you want to make, you need to upgrade your ability to lead yourself, your self leadership. And the way I define leadership these days is effectively managing your own energy, your own thoughts and feelings.
Oh, I love that. So important, right? Because we're so bombarded, especially by all the social media that is hitting us left, right, and center, that we are allowing to hit us. We're complicit in that, right? That our energy is being pulled all over the place.
Yes, absolutely. So, a lot of that work is creating the boundaries for ourselves that we need to draw. And again, I think about that all in terms of managing our energy effectively, which means, sometimes you pop on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, and you're scrolling. It's this ability within ourselves to call ourselves out on it and sort of have that voice, pop out and say, hey, what are you doing? Do you know you're scrolling? Do you know what time it is? Do you know how many minutes have gone by? If it's a time where you're really meant to be doing something else. And so learning to have that loving voice that pops out and is like, hey, what's going on here? Versus the shame voice that says, what are you doing? Why are you spending time doing that? Because nobody responds well to that voice, right? That's not a voice that you want to have a conversation with. That's the voice you want to avoid.
Yeah.
So it's learning to have that loving voice that says, hey, what's going on here? Hey, why are you so busy? Hey, why is your schedule overflowing with things? I still have that voice occasionally that I have to talk to myself around my own schedule, right? Hey, why did you not put an hour lunch break on today? to be able to have that voice within ourselves that allows us to take better care of our own energy. And then the last one I wrote down here for us is creating some thoughts on purpose to help you make the change you want to make, right? So this goes back to changing the way you're thinking. We get taught, most people get taught growing up that you don't have a lot of control over what you think or a lot of control over what you feel. And personally, now, after all of my studies and understanding and research, come to the awareness, no, we actually are primarily in control of our thoughts and our feelings. The challenge is whether or not you know that you are, right? And so a lot of life can feel like you're getting pulled around and you're getting pulled in a lot of different directions, and or that you're juggling constantly. And it can feel like life is happening to you. And so you kind of give up on trying to like really manage your thoughts more effectively or manage your feelings, because it's like somebody cuts you off in traffic. Well, I'm entitled to have thoughts about that and feelings about that, right? The issue, right, as I'm sure you've heard this, but I like to give this analogy because it's a new way of looking at even that experience, is that if we blame them for cutting us off, we're creating the unhelpful energy inside of ourselves, right? And we get worked up and we get upset at them and we start to feel these feelings and we start to think things about that bad person. And so instead, right? And this is one of the analogies. I mean, this is something I worked on years ago with a very early on mentor when I was having trouble with people cutting me off and issues in driving and traffic, right? And so creating thoughts on purpose for the next time somebody cuts me off, right? For you, the next time somebody cuts you off, having a thought that you want to think when that kind of a thing happens. So for me personally, my husband still gets a kick out of this. When someone cuts me off in traffic these days, I say, oh, either that person must be rushing to the hospital, right? If it's a woman, I'm like, oh, that woman must be pregnant. She's rushing to the hospital. Or if it's a man, I come up with some other analogy that's like a super important medical thing where they're rushing to the hospital. And that just allows me to just completely let go of it. Now, that may or may not work for you, and you make one up for yourself that will allow you to just be like, oh, they're in a hurry. They're, rushing home to so-and-so or whatever, so that you can manage your own energy more effectively, right? And so creating thoughts on purpose, if you're wanting change in your body, whether it's change in the weight of your body or it's change in the structure of your body, starting to create new thoughts that are actually going to support the change. So if you're constantly looking in the mirror with, I don't like the way my body looks. I don't like the shape. I don't like, the way my butt looks. I don't like the way this looks, or I'm fat, right? Which is a very common one that lots of people say to themselves in the mirror. Every time we do that, we are reinforcing the exact thing that we're saying we don't like. We're sending our attention to the parts of our body we feel dissatisfied with. And so then the things that we're able to see are then constant reinforcements of those very thoughts. And so then we just recreate inside of ourselves a confirmation, your butt is too big, or, you weigh too much, or et cetera, right? I mean, women especially, I feel like there are just, you can have a problem with literally every part of your body. And so the more we spend our time in that side of, in that energy and in those thoughts, the more we're actually hurting ourselves. So being able to create thoughts, I love writing them down. I'm a very like practical, hands-on person. I want to like have it right in front of me and be like, okay, if I read these thoughts every day, it will help me to start thinking about this in a new way. I don't do that particular thing as much, but that is something I did for a good 2-3 years when I was really getting into this work and understanding how to successfully change my thoughts. There's lots of stuff out there these days around breath work, around meditation to help you become aware of your thoughts, change your thoughts. And I just like the simplicity of you come up on something and you're like, I don't like this. Okay, cool. What would you like to think about it instead? Just literally write it down on a note card. I will put it right up here on my computer. I encourage my clients to put it on the computer, put it in the, in your car, put it in the bathroom so that you're seeing it in the places where you are the most of the time. And then you just practice reading it. That's all that's required. It can feel so simple. And yet, this is how our mind works. So it's reading it and then also allowing yourself to feel the new way you want to feel when you're thinking the new thought. Again, this is how the mind works. The mind thinks a thought, and then the mind has an automatic feeling that comes up right up after that. And from that place of feeling, we then go take action. So when we're taking action from an original thought that says something like, I don't like my body, then we're creating a feeling, an energy inside of us that feels like, I don't like my body. And then we take action from that place. So even if you're doing like a workout this morning, as I'm doing the workout, the quality of the workout will be determined by the energy that you are doing the workout with. It's so amazing. So simple, but amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So creating those thoughts and feelings on purpose. I love my workout time. I mean, honestly, when I'm doing my workout time, I'm like, I'm spending 30 minutes hanging out with Tracy. This is so much fun. And she's just literally walking me through step by step of exactly how to move my body. So one of the things I like the most about the workouts is how step by step it is it feels like I'm getting that really personalized attention. So that's one of the thoughts that I have used to be motivated to do the workouts.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you. And thank you for sharing that, because when I was designing those workouts, and for people who are watching, let's just let them know that we use the word workout because there really isn't another word for what we're doing in the English language, right? But they're not hot, sweaty, like push it, feel the burn kind of. They're more like self-care. And I love that that's what you're feeding back to me, because that was my intention when I was choreographing and filming the workouts.
I feel it.
And I love that you can feel that. Thank you.
Yeah. So practicing that kind of a thought, right?
Yes.
I love my workout time. I feel so held, so looked after as I'm going through the 30 minutes. And if I have, a situation where I'm like, oh, I'm not really sure how to do this, or, oh, this feels uncomfortable. Instead of my mind going to, I can't do this, right? I lean back on these original beliefs that I've already created for myself about how I can do them, about how I feel really looked after, I feel really cared about. And it doesn't take me into the, what's wrong with you? Why can't you do this? You should be able to do this by now. So you can do that with literally any part of your life, right? You want to make more money? Cool. Create some beliefs that will actually create a positive kind of an energy, a positive feeling inside of you about how that can happen. You want your relationship with your spouse to be more rewarding, more satisfying. You want your romance to be more satisfying. Cool. Create some beliefs of how you are desiring that part of your life to look, and then identify what is the feeling that you want to be experiencing with those new beliefs. And then you just spend time with them. Like the super simple way to do this is you just spend time with those new beliefs in those new places of feeling, and you practice. Just like with the exercise workout, right? It's literally about practice, which is one of the things I love about, your videos is you're like, even in the video, and then of course in the coaching calls, you'll say, just go through the 30 minutes. You don't need to stop. You don't need to try to be perfect about it. You don't need to press pause. Just go through the workout, because again, we're practicing in your program, we're practicing the body doing a different motion. In the mind, we're practicing the mind doing a different thought, which is the same thing. You're practicing a new motion in your mind, a new pathway in the mind. And then creating a feeling that goes along with it, right? If every time I did the, what's the one where I'm leaning forward, the bodacious?
Oh, the back leg bonanza.
Yes, the back leg bonanza, which I love that it has that name, because when we first started doing that one, I was like, this is not fun. And because you had named it that, it was like, it made it just lighter. It just had a lighter feeling to it, something more doable. So again, right, those are the ways in which we train our mind to get on board with the change we're desiring to see happen, is those positive associations.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you. These have really, you have schooled us today. Tell us how can people work with you? Because what you said earlier about having a coach that can help you process all of this, right? Because it can be hard to even give ourselves the permission to be with those thoughts, to go to the place where we even allowing ourselves to understand, well, what is this kind of subconscious conversation, subconscious push-pull going on? I think working with a coach is a huge part of breaking through with that. So how can people work with you, and what does that look like?
Yes. So first off, feel free to come join me over on my personal Facebook. I do most of my posting there. So if you're interested just to get a better feel for me and other things that I'm doing, that's the best place to connect with me. And you can also just shoot me a message right over Messenger to reach out and set up a time for us to meet. Also, my Facebook, or sorry, my website is sarahlesliecoaching.com. And the way that I work with people is one-on-one, where I'm literally coming alongside of you, spending this time looking at all of the things that you just outlined and all of the things that I just talked about, because you're right, it is very hard to do it on our own. It's impossible for me. I have felt like it was impossible for me to do it on my own. And I have an amazing coach that helps me get through and break through my own limitations. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming to speak to us today. I hope you'll come again, because
Absolutely.
these are such important topics. I know everybody in my community, there are people who are wanting to change. Absolutely, right? Because that's
Yes.
what we're about. We're about change. We're about changing the body for the better from the inside out. So nobody comes into my group, right, because they don't want to change, because they don't want to feel better, right?
Yeah.
So they've made that step, they've made that initial step, to sign up for the Untake Your Neck guide, or to come to the walking challenge, or whatever it is. And then it's like, okay, well, where to from here? Because suddenly all those good intentions melt away.
Yeah. It can be intimidating.
Yeah, when it comes to the decision, making the decision, okay, on one level, I want this change. And on the other level, it's very confronting.
Yes.
Do I really want it?
Yeah.
Because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here. It's like, just because you want change on the one hand doesn't mean all of you actually wants it. I think there's a part of us that actually really doesn't want it.
Correct. The resistance. True? Absolutely.
Yes.
Because again, we have these very core programs. That's the way Joe Dispenza refers to them, and I've just adopted. We have these very core programs that say not to change.
Why?
And we are dialed in.
Why?
Well, again, it goes back to the core reason, right? We are wired for survival. And so if we're wired, literally the design of the human and of the human mind and the way that we think is wired for survival, that's always our core need. And we will always, no matter what's going on, we will always work to meet our core survival needs. It's only after we've met those core survival needs that we allow for the thought to upgrade. Yeah. So that's why. And it's absolutely true, because, if you get kicked out, and it's true today, the same as it was true, 100 years ago, the same as it was true 1,000 years ago, that when you get kicked out, of the group that you live within, the community, the environment, because you have decided to think differently than the rest of your world, then the mind, right, our internal selves thinks, I am alone.
And I'm going to die.
Yes. So it's the same thing today, even though like we have more resources available to us today and we're like, oh, that's not actually going to happen. It's never about it actually happening. It's always about how we're feeling like it could happen.
Right.
And it's a terrifying feeling.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the part of you that doesn't want to change. Right.
Yeah.
But what I'll just say, and as we're ending, is that I also believe that while we are wired for survival as our first core agenda, we are also wired to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we have these two parts of our mind. We have the unconscious and the conscious, because we are both wired for survival and wired to upgrade.
Right.
Wired to have pleasure, wired to enjoy the life that we have here on earth.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So we're wired for both. And that's why we end up feeling internal conflict, the push-pull, as you were saying.
Yeah.
Because we're wired for both of those.
Right.
So you can just know, and everybody listening can just know, whatever the change is that you're desiring in your heart, where you're like, oh, it'd be so good if fill in the blank. That's something that's coming from within you that you are literally wired to have. So it's 100% possible for you. And so any thought that comes up that says, I can't, it's only because some part of the survival mindset, the survival way of thinking is coming into conflict with, I can't.
Right.
And so that's what we're working to resolve inside of the coaching container.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming to share with us today. And please do, if you want to upgrade, and who doesn't, okay, please do go and check out Sarah. Do you have a Facebook group?
I don't have a Facebook group. I just post on my personal Facebook page, Sarah Leslie.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Amazing. So go and look up Sarah on Facebook. And thank you so much for coming to talk to us today.
Thank you. And, this is so fun.
I love your hashtag, go all in. Love it. Love it. That is what it's all about. Amazing. Have a wonderful rest of your day.